the commentators thought that white was winning, that Fischer did not have enough for the sacrificed piece in this position. And now for a story about the one, the only American world champion of all time, Robert J. Fischer. And he had a game played in the 1960s that was so complicated that when it ended, the commentators thought that he'd lost, only realized he had won. What a fun moment. Let's take a look at it. In this position, he accepted the isolated pawn to get a really strong knight to d3, and then he lashed out with knight takes f2. Better take the knight, otherwise you're just losing all your kingside pawns. So after king takes, knight g4. Now at first, the grandmaster playing white really couldn't understand why Fischer was doing this, because it looks like when the king hides and knight takes, that Fischer is just going to win the exchange, but of course he's lost a minor piece already, so he's going for a rook and 2 pawns for 2 minor pieces, right? Well, actually not, because after the queen saved itself, if you content yourself with capturing this rook, then when white takes back, although white has given away 1 point extra, white is certainly going to win this pawn back and have a couple of really strong bishops. So again, the grandmaster playing white could not understand why Bobby Fischer would do such a thing, but then he played knight takes g2. It turns out that the weakness of the light squares is a lot more important than worrying about points. And after king takes, we have to open up this diagonal to lead to the king, and the move d4 does just that. And there are big problems in white's position. If you move this knight to a random square, then you'll lose this knight with check thanks to the bishop currently hiding out on this diagonal. So the knights look like they're all tangled up. It almost looks like resign time, except that you can't actually take. However, when you do, now this knight is still in big trouble, but being targeted by the other bishop and of course the queen. Now Fischer starts with bishop to b7 check, and there's already not a good spot to move this king to. If your king comes on a little walk, queen to d7 check, he better not keep walking, and even g4 is really not going to last after h5, putting pp on the pp, and that white king is not going to survive. Let's look at one more line. After bishop to b7 check, the king could have hid on a square like, I don't know, how about g1? Yeah, kind of wiggled my king to g1. The problem there is that amazingly this rook is overworked, and Fischer would defeat this move with bishop takes knight check, queen takes, and now rook to e1 check. Look at that. Of course, if your rook takes, then you lose your queen, and if your king moves, now essentially this rook is, I guess you'd say, pinned to the other rook. We have a very strange Oreo with 1 cookie and 2 creams. Queen takes queen, rook takes, and then Fischer would be up the exchange with an extra pawn in his hand as well. So let's go back and take a look at the actual game continuation. White played the move king to f1. And again, the commentators thought that white was winning, that Fischer did not have enough for the sacrificed piece in this position. And after Fischer's next move, the commentators who were in the next room heard the game was over and they assumed Fischer had lost. But actually he had won, and it's the tiniest little brilliancy of all time. The queen just moves from d8 to d7. You see how quiet I got? You see how easy chess is? The queen just moves to a light square, and combined with this light square bishop, there is no real stopping the threat of queen to h3. White resigned in this position, even though white is up a piece. Now, I guess I could give a couple of sample lines. Here's one. If the knight goes back to the square f3 to try to guard some of those light squares and to attack this queen, well, you could actually just maybe trade queens or something and then try to win the knight on c3. That seems pretty reasonable. But a better move is actually queen to h3 check, and now you're going to win this knight. Unless white plays the queen over, then you could play queen back. And now this knight is totally lost. There's no good way to defend it. This knight is still free with the rook behind it. This king is still in big trouble. I mean, I just can't find anything good about white's position. If we go back after queen to d7, maybe we can look at one more line. How about knight on c to b5, trying to guard this knight and trying to make sure that, you know, the other knight on c3 doesn't get captured. But then we'd have queen h3 check, and when the king runs away to g1, the simplest way to win is actually for the other bishop to change diagonals. And after bishop to h6, no matter where you put your queen, bishop to e3 check, and this king has officially run out of squares to move to. So I love the sacrifice, but I loved even more the days before computers and commentators just getting things wrong. Queen to d7, what a fun little winning move. Bobby Fischer, there was simply no other player like him.